well, hey, Joe. I'm glad Karen, my sister and co-listing agent is on this because she's seen a lot of what we're going to talk about in action lately, um, which is all about having sellers ask you for a price reduction and seller psychology. Um, and I don't know, well, Nikki, you're here in Northeast Florida, Joe's in Virginia. And then people are going to watch this on replay are probably all over the place. So of course, real estate is, local. But I think a lot of us are seeing similar things. Before we get started though, just a couple housekeeping notes. Um, Make sure that you switch to Slack. If you haven't yet, make sure you get on Slack. Workplace is going away. I believe we will keep our main communication for the network in the Facebook group. So if you're not yet part of the Facebook group for the network, make sure to join that. And that will be our main kind of hub of communication. That's also where you can find all the past trainings that are recorded. So if there's something that you missed that looked interesting, go ahead. Oh, then we said something, but okay. So I just wanted to remind you guys about that workplace is going away. Okay, great. Thanks. Lovely, confirmed it's being recorded. So like I said, we're definitely in a shifting market where more and more often price reductions are necessary, and it's a conversation a lot of agents. Go ahead, Karen. Okay.
Oh, no, I don't have anything.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought I heard you. It's a conversation a lot of agents are often either nervous to have or scared to have. So I want to go over kind of some of the things we do in advance or all along the time of the listing to set the tone for when a price reduction is necessary. And oftentimes that results in the sellers coming to us and asking if we should reduce the price rather than us feeling that we're in some awkward position to have to say, hey, the market's not supporting the price. That happens too, but it often comes over better, and it's better received by doing things the way we do them. So let me get on into this. And then we're a small group, so feel free to stop and just unmute yourself and ask questions or share. Karen, you've been part of quite a few price reductions in the last year or two, so feel free to add comments too, because there's things I might have forgotten. That's important. But anyway, a lot of it has to do with seller psychology and just seller psychology and then setting the proper expectations up front. Hold on one sec. Setting the proper expectations up front and having them convinced that you're doing everything possible to market the property. Because if they're not sure that you're doing a great job marketing it and getting it out there, then they're not going to be as willing to accept that it is the market and it's the price. So I named this winning the listing is step one, because it's not that difficult to win a listing, but pricing it well and then keeping it, that's really the master skill, especially in today's market. So how you handle the conversations with sellers from the minute they become aware of you. So even how they see you in communications, whether it's marketing, whether it's other things like that, they have to see you as somebody that is a professional, and how that's all, how the tone of all of that is really what makes or breaks the relationship you have with them. And they're looking for us to be professionals. They're not looking for us to be yes people or order takers. Otherwise they could just sell it themselves. So they're looking for us skills, knowledge, explanations of things, and that's where a lot of agents fall short too. Hold on one sec. Stop. Um, a lot of agents often fall short because they're nervous. I actually had a text conversation with an agent that I coach yesterday, and he was just very nervous about would he live up to the seller's expectations. And I was like, look, it's not about living up to the seller's expectations because you're just conveying data. You're giving the seller an understanding of what that data means, and then explain it, and then the seller can make a decision. But it's not about, you setting, it's not about you, it's about how you explain the data. So that's, hold on one sec, stop it. Sorry. My puppy's trying to play with every animal in the house right now. So just keep that in mind all the time, that we are the professionals and they've hired us to pay us a good amount of money to be a professional, not just somebody who throws the listing on the MLS. They can do that for a flat fee of like $7.95. They're looking to us as professionals, but they're also looking for us as great marketers for their property, and somebody who understands everything and can explain it. So that's kind of what we want to share today. So everything starts from the truth. So pricing from the start, market realities. I always have a hard time with that word. And the role of the agent. And the reason I say the role of the agent, it's important for us and for them to understand that we are marketers. We as agents, we're marketers, we're advisors, we're strategists. We don't set the price that the market will respond to. And unfortunately, the seller doesn't set the price that the market will respond to either. The seller sets the price of what they're willing to sell for, but they don't set the price. It can't be based on what they need to get out of it, what they want to get out of it, or even what they've invested. Hold on 1 second. I just have to mute you guys for 1 sec. Sorry. So having the conversation and getting that out up front and over and over and over, just dripping these little things in. It's kind of like Hansel and Gretel when they, have their little cookie crumbs, or the witch had the cookie crumbs. All this language that I'm going to give you in the next 40 minutes is those little breadcrumbs to get them to understand that when we have marketed the property and we've exposed it and done everything possible, if it's not getting the showings, it's not getting offers, it is the price, right? So just think of that as Hansel and Gretel and the breadcrumbs. So we talk about the market sets the price, not the agents or the sellers. We talk about the agent, and again, this is just little things that you can sprinkle throughout your conversation. The agents can't outmarket the wrong price. There is no way you could spend $1 million to market a property, and if the price isn't being responded to by the market, by the buyers in the market, it doesn't matter how much you spend, which is sometimes what sellers might think. And sometimes we have to just tell them, it's our job to expose it, but we don't set the price. We're price strategists, not setters, and our job is to expose it to the right buyers. And as you go up in price point, that becomes really, really important, because as you go up in price point, the properties might be really unique. They might be attractive to really specialized buyers. So you have to start doing your marketing to get in front of those specialized buyers. If you're selling average price point properties where you're not having to seek out a specialized pool of buyers, then your job is a little bit easier. You've got to do great photography, great descriptions, great marketing, and then conveying all that great marketing to your sellers, at least in a weekly or bi-monthly or monthly, sequence or cadence, depending on that. So I love to talk about that we are fishing for the pool of the buyers. So if you imagine the buyers are like fish, and you're the fisherman. You and the sellers are the fishermen. You're on the boat and you drop a line in with bait on it. That bait is the price. But if the fish, can you guys see me in the screen still? If the fish are over here and you've dropped your line in over here, you might get a teeny nibble or something like that, where one fish is straight over and taking a look at it. But you're not going to get the proper amount of showings that you need to know, okay, we're in the right place. So you might do what we call price improvement. We never use the words price drop, price reduction. That just psychologically doesn't come across great with sellers. So we talk about price improvement, price change, something like that. We might do a price improvement and now we drop our line over here. Again, that's the price. and the pool of fish, they might start biting a little bit more. They might start having more showings because now you're closer to the pool of buyers. But there's always a price point that when you drop your line in, now you've dropped your line in where the pool of buyers are, and you start to get the appropriate number of showings. Now, the appropriate number of showings is going to be very specific to the price point and your location. And that's going to come from your experience. So in some parts of California that are maybe still very, very hot, that might be multiple showings in a day. In my market in Northeast Florida, at the mid to upper tiers, and even from the average to upper tiers, that's going to be a couple showings a week, right? Or in the top tiers, that might be one showing every 1 to 2 weeks. But you will know that in time, but explaining to them that the price is what brings them in. Now, at the end of the day, the price also has to line up with them as far as what they see online when they see the pictures, the location of the property in general. And then also once they get to the property, it needs to make sense to them as well, because there's certain things that don't come across in pictures that can affect the price of what a market is willing to pay. Low ceilings is one of those things. Loud train track or bridge noise is one of those things. Messy neighbors or things like that could be one of those things, a weird floor plan or something like that. Those can be things, even an odor of animals or something like that, cigarette stuff like that. Those are things that can result in showings but no offers. But then at the end of the day, if you're getting showings and no offers and there's things you can't change, price is always still the great equalizer. But before you can even start to figure it out, you've got to be getting to the point where you're getting the appropriate number of showings, because that's telling you, as long as you're marketing it well. And you'll be able to tell if you're marketing well because you'll be able to see the views online on like Zillow.com, Homes.com, maybe you have other resources. You'll be able to see if you're getting enough views, right? Okay. Yeah, cat urine smell, exactly. Cat urine, dog urine, mold, mildew, humidity, like odors are things that of course don't convey at all in photos. So what we're looking for is, this is kind of what I call the funnel of a buyer. We need a good number of views. And again, we see the views by looking at Zillow.com, looking at Homes.com. You should be getting nice reports. How many people are saving that property? If you're not getting saves and getting a lot of views, there's something that people aren't responding to. If you're getting a lot of saves and a lot of views, but they're still not coming, that means there's a disconnect from the price. And generally speaking, if it's 10% or more price too high, a lot of the best buyers won't come see it, because the best buyers often don't want to insult the seller. So they feel there's so much of a disconnect, they're not willing to make an offer that's 12, 15% off of list price. They might make an offer that's 3, 4, 5, 6% off, but over 10%. And so if you're getting a lot of views, good saves, but no showings, you're at least 10% off, right? So that the funnel would be number of views, saves, showings, conversations that kind of could be purchase type conversations where they start asking detailed questions where they're showing real interest, maybe second showings, things like that, and then offers. So it's the same kind of funnel we have when we're looking for clients. We're looking for conversations, getting in front of the buyer or seller, signing a buyer or seller agreement, getting under contract, close. It's the same kind of funnel for sellers for their buyer. Views, saves, showings, conversations around potential purchasing, offers. So we set that up front so they know to be looking out for those things. They know if showings start to die down, oh, we might be approaching stale. So we talk about that again throughout the course of the listing. And if you haven't talked about that yet with your sellers and you're having problems with pricing, start to jot these things down, because every week you can have one of these conversations and you'll start leading them down the path, the Hansel and Gretel path of understanding, oh, it really is the price. The market is not responding to the price. So like I said, high views and low showings, overpriced. High showings and no offers means you're close, but there's something in the house that's holding them off. And again, those are things like floor plan, odors, noise, things like that that you normally can't change. Next thing, I talk about scripts, with I'm going to share with you guys now, and the permission to be honest. I like to ask the seller very early on, even potentially at the listing appointment, if I can tell that they're kind of still aspirationally pricing in their head, permission to be honest. I said, hey, there might be a time that I need to be really honest with you about something you may not want to hear, but you probably need to hear as a seller so that you can make the right decision for you. Will I have your permission to be honest at that time? And that normally kind of like, they don't know how to respond to that because they expect that you're always going to be honest with them, but then you're starting to sow the seeds that not all agents are honest and not all agents are willing to tell them the stuff that they might not want to hear. So like I said here, you don't have to say it this bluntly, but do you want to hear the truth or what you want to hear? And what happens is a lot of agents will just tell sellers what they want to hear because they're scared or nervous. But we need to position ourselves like a doctor or an attorney, financial planner, basically as a trusted advisor, that we're going to tell them the stuff they need to know, even if they don't want to hear it. Like a doctor's going to tell you if you have cancer or some kind of sickness, they're not going to not tell you because you don't want to hear it. They're going to tell you that, and then they're going to help advise you through the course of how to deal with that. And they will start to see you as a true professional and a true advisor, and not just somebody who's, again, a yes person. Sugarcoating things, especially in a tough market, is what erodes trust because they realize you're not up to par to handle this kind of tougher um, topic. And clarity and truthfulness presented in a calm way, that's what earns you loyalty and trust. That's when they will come to you and ask what you think, even when they think about making a price reduction. So data is part of what builds that trust. Days on market and explaining what the days on market means, months of inventory and explaining what months of inventory means, the listed to sold price, and then at least on I would tell them upfront, or at least 1 month in, what's the average days on market, months of inventory, and list to sales price ratio for properties in our area at our price point, not the whole market, our price point specifically. And then every month, giving them information, hey, the days on market is getting longer. That means, the market is softening, or the months of inventory is increasing. That means the market is softening. Sold versus listed is coming down. Or conversely, maybe it's not. But showing them how things change, because if we don't show them, if this is a multi-month listing, which most are these days, if we're not telling them how things change, they think everything is exactly as it was when they first listed the house. And in a shifting market, over a period of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, things can shift dramatically. And we need to be keeping them up to date so that we stay ahead of the market. We don't want to chase the market. We also want to let them know what new listings have come on the market that are similar to theirs, what have expired, what's gone under contract, what's had a price reduction. And I normally like to also identify like 2 listings, 1 to 3 listings that we think are the most likely to be looked at along with ours by buyers. So figure out what those are and set up a search so that they're always coming up for you if there's any changes in those. And I would also set up a search that your particular listing would fall within. If some buyer or buyer's agent set up a search, yours would come up. So geographic location, price range, size, whatever, so that if something new comes on the market, you know that it's on the market and you can let them know. So I would be talking about data as much as you possibly can. You don't have to drown them in data, but data separates you from what's going on with the market. Because if we're not giving them data and we're just telling them what we think, they start to think that's our opinion, and they start to think, oh, we just don't believe in the listing, or we just want an easy sale. They think it's us giving them information and opinion for what's best for us. Whereas if we're giving them data and saying what this means, then they see, oh, this is what the market is doing. It's not about us. It's really about what the market's doing. And it basically backs up everything you're saying with evidence, and it removes like ego or like emotion and creates just clarity. We just want to create clarity. So I talk a lot too about the art and science of expectations so that they know what to expect. Hey, if we're in the price range of the right pool of buyers, we should be getting in your price point in your area, 2 to 3 showings a week. Hey, if we've nailed the price, we will likely be somewhere around 96, 95% of list price when all is said and done. So they're not expecting, 100% if that's not what your market bears. Um, hey, we should be getting X amount of views in a month, or X amount of saves, or X amount of inquiries, or X amount of showing, so that they know and they're looking for that. And when that's not happening, you can say, I'm going to look at everything that I control, which is marketing, so that if we need to change something with the marketing, if we need to change something with the presentation, we can make sure we're doing everything to get in front of those right, most motivated, most properly aligned buyers. But if we're doing all of that and we can show that we're doing all of that, then we're not yet where the market is responding. And I always talk about that, like where the market is responding, the highest the market will bear, things like that, basically putting it back on the market, putting it back on the market. These are conversations and little speaking points that you need to weave throughout all your conversations. Um, Also, if you happen to know, either you might be able to get from your MLS, or you might just know from your own experience, like the average number of showings to get an offer. So in the price point that Karen and I sell, on average, around 10 to 12 showings should result in an offer when we're priced right. So if we're going a long time and getting very few showings, we know we have a problem. Or if now we're 15, 20, 30 showings in and we're not getting offers, we also know we have a problem. So when you're getting high showings and not an offer, again, it goes back to, there's something about the property when you actually get there that's holding people off. Some of the things you can change, odor you can often change. A lot of the things you can't change. You can't change bridge noise, railroad track noise, low ceilings, weird layouts, things like that. You can't change them. So just kind of setting those expectations up front, and they'll be looking for them, and they'll pay attention, and they'll remember if all of a sudden what you've been saying starts to play out. Because a lot of times people don't have these conversations up front. They don't set the expectation. So the seller has no idea. They might think one showing every 2 weeks is fine. They might think it's fine to be able to say, I can wait, I'm patient, I'm not in a rush. They don't know if we don't tell them. So what I like to do a lot, again, graphics drive the story home. I say, we're gonna deploy the third strategy. And what that means is we're gonna take the average days on market for your priced home in your location, and we're gonna divide it into third. So for easy conversation for this training, let's just pretend that's 60 days. The average house goes under contract around 60 days. So that would be 20 days, 20 days, 20 days. And we'll say, if you want to try aspirational pricing, you want to make sure that you don't leave money on the table. You want to make sure that you get the best, the highest the market will bear. We can do that for a full 20 days. That's 3 weeks. We can give it everything we got for 3 weeks and see where we stand. Well, we're gonna be able to look at the views, we're gonna be able to look at the saves, we're gonna see how many showings we've gotten. But by the end of those 3 weeks, we're gonna know if we are where those pool of buyers is. And if it's not, we're gonna have to go ahead and make some kind of price improvement. We're gonna have to change our price strategy. We use those words so that they're ready for that, so that we go into the second third, here, and we make that price change, and we open it up to a whole new pool of buyers. Now, a small price change, like a few $1,000s, 5,000, whatever, is often not enough. You want to get into the next kind of bracket of where buyers are searching. So at the upper price points, that might be $100,000 price changes. In the mid price properties, that might be $25,000 price changes. At the low price point properties, that might be $10,000. But a little small change isn't really going to be what you need to do, because that's going to be telling the buyers in the market that you're pretty fixed at that price. You just did some small token price change to make it pop up again. Whereas if you do something of significance, again, it doesn't have to be huge, but it has to be something of significance, then You're telling the buyers in the market, hey, we are motivated sellers. We do intend to sell. We are looking for the right price where the market starts to respond. And then as a note to you agents, we always change up our front photo every time we do that. So, and then if now we get into the third, so in our example here, 60 days, 40 days on, I say we definitely want to do a price change to really make sure that we're in that pool of buyers, because what we don't want to do is go beyond like the stale time where we've passed the average days on market and now we've become stale, because stale is like the kiss of death for a listing, and we'll talk about that here for a minute. So this third strategy allows the seller to make sure that they test the market, they make sure they're getting the price they want. But it makes sure that you stay with or ahead of the market if you need to do a price change, so you don't fall into that dreaded stale thing. So the reason I'm not in a hurry is not a good thing, is because being not in a hurry can very easily land you in that stale timeline where you're now much later, longer into the term of when a property should sell. And then the buyers just do not respond well to stale listings. And then by then, a whole bunch of other listings have now come on the market that are the new little darling, and you're just like the old limping along listing on the market still. If people are like, oh my gosh, it's still on the market. Why? I wonder what's wrong with it. That's exactly what they always think. You might consider having what I call a seller price commitment agreement, an SPA, where you either agree in writing or you agree verbally that we are going to do those price adjustments at, a third, a third, and a third. The other thing I would suggest is outline the seller's true motivation, right? So really try to understand, what do they really want out of this listing. Some people are fine to not sell if they don't get their price. Some people need to sell, want to sell, have something to do. Sometimes they're not even honest with you or upfront with you, but you've got to kind of figure out what's their true motivation. So something like this can really help, because if they're open to price adjustments along the way, that's showing you that they are motivated to be true sellers, not just on the market. And it helps kind of set up those conversations to provide less friction when it's time to have those conversations. The other graph I like to show is the you don't need me or I can't help you. Where I say, hey, there is a bell curve, basically a pricing, where this is the time on the market. Sorry, this is the time on the market and the price that you'll be able to generate for your listing. But there's definitely a price that you don't even need me as an agent. Like, you can sell it yourself and you can get that price. Would you agree? And they're like, yes, of course. And then I say, okay, well, conversely, there's also a price that I can't make this happen. I can't create real estate magic. I can't create that, and I can't help you. So we want to find within that time frame of the average days on market, we want to find where is that sweet spot for buyers in the market so that we can maximize what you sell for, but don't become stale. And sometimes that really helps them understand, like, oh, wow, okay, you're right. Like, there is, because a lot of times they just never consider that that property won't sell. They come up with this price in their head and they just never consider that it won't sell. So I like to have what I call the anchor and frame. So a lot of times agents will just give a number, but I'd like to anchor that out, like saying, this is a low, medium, and high priced range based on comps. And that kind of frames it to say, hey, somewhere within here is where we can be expected to sell. And then it helps have that kind of conversation about, if we want to sell fast, we can sell at this price point. And then the anchor, like, kind of anchors it saying, okay, this is, I feel confident we can sell for this price point. And that will get you a relatively smooth and fast sale. But within that frame, we're not going to be able to get outside of that, just so they know. And so that they are really ready for that. So just having that conversation, and even if it's a conversation that's not comfortable, having that conversation so that they know there's a range. And then once you get an offer, if you do get an offer at some point that's not acceptable to them, first of all, I also like to say, hey, by the way, our first offer is normally our best offer. Or at least what we can get that buyer up to is often the best offer. So I tell them that before we ever get a first offer, so they know that I've said this. And then when we do get that offer, if they reject it or we don't get to a conclusion and we don't get under contract, I normally say, okay, well, now we kind of know the base of where the market is, meaning somebody who's willing to offer that, we know people will go to that price, at least if the market stays relatively stable. So that kind of helps you anchor things too. But so I like to explain, oh, hold on, Joe. Oh, hold on, I'm seeing your comments. Oh yeah, Karen said small bedrooms. Um, Joe said strategic pricing is based off active competition, not past sales. Never reject an offer, counter it. I don't know if I totally agree with that, Joe, about strategic pricing being based on active competition, not past sales. We can have a separate conversation about that. Never reject an offer, always counter it. I do agree with that. I always say getting an offer, especially in a tight market, I mean, a soft market, getting an offer is the win. It's being asked to dance. And I always say, you know, if you're at like your high school dance and there's that beautiful person standing on the wall, but nobody's asking them to dance, you're like, what's wrong with it? That's like the stale listing because people are like, what's wrong with it? What's wrong with him or her? Whereas if you're asked to dance, that means somebody did come and say, I'm willing to buy your property. Let's see, can we dance? So I always say that we've been asked to dance. That's a big deal because a lot of other sellers are not being asked to dance at all. So let's see how far we can take it. And you're right, I always counter it. So I hear what you're saying, Joe, about strategic pricing is based on active competition, meaning you need to compete with what's on the market for sale. But I think you do, it, especially in a declining market, that's even more important than comps, but you also do need to look at what's sold. Your current slide shows what I mean about sold versus active. Oh, right. So what this slide is, and this is probably one of the most important things you can show your seller. This is from our MLS. This is all listings in our MLS, and this is showing how many are actively for sale versus how many have sold. That's a huge graphic to show, and I would print that out or have it as part of your listing presentation and then have it part of your monthly update. Because what happens is most sellers, especially if they still have like 2020, 2021 in their rear view mirror as far as market actuality, they think every house that goes on the market is going to sell, including theirs. This is showing no, 10 homes sold, 65 are still on the market unsold. And we want to put everything together, which is marketing, pricing, and then what you have that you can't change, those three things. Those things all have to come together to get us to the sold, or else we're going to be one of the, we're going to be one of these 65 that are not sold. That is a huge, huge thing. So sometimes letting them see that graphically, it'd be like, oh, wow, like I had no idea. Like they literally think if they list it, it's going to sell. And so that's why pricing becomes so, so, so important because you want to be one of these. And pricing again is the great equalizer when everything else is on point. Your marketing is on point. You fix the things you can fix. So if you got feedback that there was urine smell, you fixed it. Now it really just comes down to price because price is the great equalizer. So I always tell my sellers, you'd rather be in the sold bar than the still waiting bar. Especially if in your market, the market is shifting or going slightly down. Every month that you wait on the market longer means your property's gonna sell for less. Because if the market is going down, it's gonna sell for less. And I have a graph to show you what I mean there in a minute. Joe says, yeah. Yeah, Karen, go ahead and ask some questions.
No, I was saying maybe other people have questions.
Yeah, I told them in the beginning, anybody can unmute yourself if you want to ask something or say something. And then we definitely will have questions at the end as well.
Okay.
Okay. So I like to call this like my calm clarity method, where basically positioning myself as an advisor, not a salesperson. Because when I'm positioned in their eyes as a salesperson, what we all think about salespeople, we all think about salespeople that they're telling us things to help themselves to get to a sale. So I always like to position myself as an advisor, and I'm detached from the outcome for me, and I'm invested in the outcome for what they want for themselves, which might include not selling. So as soon as they realize that you're detached from the outcome of what it means for me because I'm an advisor, rather than somebody just trying to sell something, their house, then they really start to understand and trust what I have to say more. So it's elegant, emotionally intelligent, and positions you as a calm strategist, not a panicked messenger. Not have, you might have heard this term, commission breath. It's not a nice term, but people refer to that as agents having commission breath, meaning everything we say is how can we get to a closing? How can we get to a closing, regardless of what's best for the seller? So I really try to position myself as a calm advisor. And I know Joe does a really good job with this because he talks to a lot of people in pre-foreclosure stage. And his goal is to help them stay in the house, not sell. Where there are agents out there who would go after pre-foreclosure list homes and try to get them to sell. So in the calm clarity method, we tell the sellers the truth about today's market without fear or friction or desperation. We just tell them what it is. And then we talk about what this means to you, what the options could be for you. Finding out, do you really need to sell right now? I actually have a conversation with somebody today um, who's been in their house a very long time. They're wanting to know about the market. And my conversation is, do you really need to sell right now? Because if you don't, it's probably going to be more advantageous for you to wait till things settle down a little bit, instead of just, going hard for the listing. So a couple of things to note, and these are, again, just little snippets you can drop into the conversation. Is it likely a financed buyer? So in your market at that price point, you can look up past sales and you can see what percent bought with a loan. And if it's a high chance of being a financed buyer, then it still has to appraise. So it doesn't care what they want. It doesn't even matter what a buyer will pay. It still has to appraise. And that, if you're not feeling totally confident on how appraisers value things or what they can and can't do, maybe ask appraiser to give you like the 5 biggest bullet points so right? Is it worth getting an appraisal? On average, homes where there's lots of similar comps, it might be worth getting an appraisal. If you have a really high priced home or a really unique home, I typically don't like to get an appraisal, because then the seller will get hung up on that appraised value and think they're selling, losing money, leaving money on the table if they don't get the appraised value. Where at the end of the day, the real market price is what a ready, willing, and able buyer will pay. What if I lose the listing opportunity because of the price I tell them? And this is what agents say sometimes. I am okay not getting a listing for a price I tell them, and they go with somebody else, because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to be able to sell. They definitely won't sell at that price. And I don't want that person just riding me and driving me crazy throughout the listing, wanting me to spend more money, do more things, do more things. It's just not a position I want to be in. So I'd rather stay friendly with them and then maybe get the listing if it expires. And let's see what else. It really doesn't matter what's on the market other than as a benchmark to compare it to. So yeah, a lot of times people look at what's on the market and they want to price their house compared to what's on the market. And, it could be the other, especially in unique homes, those other prices might be aspirationally priced too. It doesn't mean they're going to sell. So Karen and I recently listed a property that a neighbor who had a unique property listed their property at 1.4 million. So our seller first tried to sell it for sale by owner at, I think, like 1.2. Both those prices were crazy pants bananas. Absolutely. At the time, I think the seller probably could have sold for around 7 or 800,000. So they were like 50% over market. Neither house sold. The seller we ended up eventually selling for hired somebody, didn't get it sold, agent expired, hired somebody else, didn't get it sold. finally came to us, and they told us that they had had a cash offer with that previous agent. And we said, hey, if that offer is still valid, I would go back to your previous agent and sell it to them for that price. Because we think that's more than this market will bear right now. They went back to that agent, that buyer wasn't in the market anymore, and they eventually did end up selling for $75,000 less even than that price. So that's what I mean about chasing the market down. And by the way, the house that they priced it originally compared against has never sold. It's come on and off the market for sale by owner like 4 times. So, you know, if they have some crazy pants price, sometimes ask them, hey, where did you get that price? And, you know, look at what they're comparing it to and see, did it sell or is it just on the market? Has it been on the market, on and off the market, you know, multiple times? And then the other thing I like to do is I ask them if they want us to stand firm on the price or encourage offers. Because sometimes sellers are like hooked on a price. I can't sell below X. Hooked on a price. So then every time buyers come or you're talking to buyer's agents, you're trying to defend that price. You're giving them comps, you're giving them reasons because you're trying to defend that price, assuming that you believe that price isn't a reason. And then all of a sudden your seller could be like, well, they can always make an offer. But again, the best buyers often don't make an offer if it's not at least within like a 10% range of what they think is reasonable. Or do you want to encourage offers? So I like to have that conversation with sellers too. So you know how they want you to represent them. Stand firm on the price or encourage offers. So we're going to wrap it up in about 2 more slides and then we can open it up for questions. The true cost of overpricing is for you and the seller's time, money, energy, emotional bandwidth. That's the one I hate the most, emotional bandwidth. Potentially reputational risk for you if you start to become the person who always overprices, who always has listings for a long period of time. You really risk staleness of the listing, which is like the kiss of death. And you lose the quality and motivated buyers. The quality and motivated buyers are in the front end of the listing, like the front 50% of the average days on market. So remember when I showed you that bell curve, like that front 50%, that's when the best motivated. Otherwise, all of a sudden, everybody's already seen your listing. It's not new, it's not fresh. It's again, old and boring and stale. So the stale listing effect is what buyers, how they perceive it. They think what's wrong with it. Automatically, that's what they always see. If they see something that's been on the market in their eyes for too long, they think what's wrong with it. It loses urgency, and instead of offers, you'll get hesitation or discount seekers. Because now the best motivated buyers who would have made an offer if it was in line with where they thought it should be, have gone on, they found something else, they've offered on something else and they've moved on. And so now the lowball buyers come around. So even if the issue is just overpricing in the beginning, the psychological damage is done, meaning how buyers see us. And then buyers start to use that as a tool to hit us with. Oh, it's been on the market forever. I can just, you know, make a lowball offer because they're probably desperate. So stale listings often sell for 5 to 10% less than had they been correctly priced at the beginning. So I don't mean 5 to 10% less than the list price. I mean 5 to 10% less than had they priced it right in the beginning. And high priced markets can even be 15% less than if they priced it right at the beginning or more. I pulled this graph from our MLS and I searched in our whole MLS, $1 million or more priced in the last 6 months. And listings that sold within the first 30 days sold for an average of 97% listing price to sales price. If they sold within the second and third month, it would already drop down to 94. If they sold within the third month, dropped down to 92. If they sold within the fourth month, it dropped down to 93. In 120 days or more, 92. But then also, we have sales price to original list price, meaning they've made price adjustment or adjustments along the way, and now they're selling at 84% of the original list price. So, which this is a national stat, this 15% for luxury, and this is our MLS stat, which is crazy how similar it is. So the thing is, it does not help you to be on the market longer, unless you're a really high priced or really unique and really different, where it's going to take a while to sell. Look at what the average days on market is for your area, for your price point, and that has to be really, really important in all your conversations. So just reiterate over and over and over about the risk of being stale. That's very important that they understand how this affects their end net walk away, because we want to talk about net a lot. And if you're in a flat and declining market, we don't want to be chasing the market down. You can have a case study if you have proof of strategy, like where Karen and I, when I shared that story about how that gentleman ended up selling for 100,000 less than had they priced it right in the beginning, which was 20% of what he sold it for. And just use data and confidence in setting expectations, having conversations, and telling them along the way. If you don't lead, they'll leave. And what I mean by that is if you don't lead them, they're not going to be believing you've done everything possible. They're not going to trust you as an advisor, and they're going to end up not extending it with you, expiring, and probably making that price adjustment with the next agent that goes away. They will blame you 100%. I promise you, the seller will blame you, even though it's the market. So super important. They'll let it expire and relist it with another agent, and often at the original price to you. So that's why having the conversations, be willing to have the conversations, detached from the outcome of what it means to you, and give them the very best advice you possibly can for them. And that's how you're going to win things. So your role is to incubate with confidence, meaning incubate the seller, keep them feeling confident in you. You can do that with reports, like I said. You can do that with clear feedback and giving them the feedback that you're getting from buyers and buyers agents, and that you stay visible and valuable with them, not just sticking your head in the sand like an ostrich, which is what a lot of agents do, because they feel like they don't have good news, so they don't have anything to tell them. No news is still news, right? So final thoughts and action steps: take leadership early with your seller. And if you already have sellers that's not going the way you want, just start now. Start giving them feedback, start giving them reports, start having what this means to you. Start talking about, what's your plan B if this doesn't sell, so that they can understand, oh, it might not sell. Oops. And build a system around feedback, data, positioning, giving them market updates, what you're doing. And this is our last slide, and then we'll open up for questions. Scripts on price conversations. We're not seeing engagement. The market is signaling that we're off. Again, that's taking it away from you. It's not your opinion. The market is telling us we're not where we should be. This price point has had X months of inventory. Buyers have options. So right now in our market, we're seeing 5, 6, 7, 10 months of inventory. That is all a buyer's market. And if you have the data, which all of your MLSs should be able to pull, you can show them this is a buyer's market. Use RPR, it shows it very clearly. This is a buyer's market. We want to go back to that graph of the green and the orange. Like, we don't want to be on the market, we want to be sold. They have all those other properties to choose from, and new properties coming on the market every single week. Let's use the next 10 days to reposition and re-engage engagement. We talk about a price improvement, we talk about price strategy instead of reductions and drops and things like that. I talk a lot about the highest the market will bear, so they understand, like, there is a price point that the market is just not going to bear anything over that price. And then talk about what's the plan B. Are you going to rent it out? Are you going to stay? What it is. So I'll stop sharing, and then we can open it up for questions and conversation.
So are you saying that if you're not getting any results in the first 3 months, it's better to take it off market than to try to keep
Mm-mm.
going?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying during those 3 months, 3 months is a long time for a listing, even a high price listing. And you will know within the first 3 months if you're in the price point of the pool of buyers. So I would be having these conversations frequently. Like every 2 weeks, I would be having some kind of mid-level conversation, and once a month, I would be doing a high-level report with details and information, data, what I'm doing to market. Try to have that via Zoom or in person so that you can stay ahead of the thing. I wouldn't want to be waiting 3 months to see where we are. And I've never been a fan, this whole thing about taking it off the market and refreshing days on market. That's such an antiquated tactic that worked when we didn't have Zillow. Because back in the day, the only way to see properties was through the MLS, through agents. And so having the days on market counter start over, which is for most MLSs, you have to be off the market 30 days before you can start it over. But every buyer under the sun uses Zillow or something like Zillow, Trulia, and they go and they look at the history. So there's no benefit in my mind of having it off the market. So hopefully that helped.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to ask what other people send their clients for updates of how the listing's doing.
Maybe they're not yet.
Yeah, I
Oh.
haven't started yet, but it's been on the market for 10 days. It's kind of been slow going, but we did price it right when we first started talking, and then the time it took them to add a bedroom and a bathroom to the first floor in June, the market just fell considerably, and a lot of people took their homes off the market. And I think it's because they were somewhat overpriced anyhow. A lot of people were kind of wanting to cash in because they saw it happening, right, a few years before.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're already at that point of having a conversation, but
I definitely would. I would pull up every graph that you have of what's happened in the last 6 months in your market. And if you see things shifting to be towards a buyer's market, which would be longer days on market, lower list to sales price ratio, higher inventory, and then that graph of showing sold versus what's for sale, because you want to stay in front of the market if they truly want to sell. Not all sellers have to sell.
Yeah.
Maybe they're okay to hold and live in the thing and, try again in 2 years. Maybe they're gonna rent it out. Maybe they're okay to keep it vacant and just wait.
yeah,
That's the other.
they truly want to sell, but they had a really aspirational, as you call it, price starting out that wasn't even close. And so we
No, I lost you.
Yeah,
Yeah, then
I
you
think
need to be having weekly conversations with them probably. And a monthly big report.
So one thing I do is when I sit down at the initial listing presentation, I have a PDF that I actually print out, but it's basically a bullseye that goes in, and it basically says drive-bys only 12% off, drive-bys and low number of showings 6 to 12% off, showings but no offers or about 4 to 6% off. And that helps you dial it in. So when you give them that price range and you have a strategic pricing conversation of the market fair market value of your house is in this range somewhere, we need to find the right buyer.
Right.
Now to position ourselves, it's a strategic one based off of what you're pricing against. If you're in the luxury market, it's a little bit different, but in the bread and butter market, you can tell it's pretty tight. You need to be the top 25% in presentation, the top 25% in location, and the bottom 25% in price for that notch that you're marketing in.
Yeah.
And when you start out by saying, hey, if we're getting people looking at the house, but nobody's coming, we're too high. If we got a bunch of people coming, but we're not getting any offers, we're about 5% too high. And by having that conversation at the front, when you're having that weekly call, because you should call all your listings every week, just to let them know, hey, this is what happened this last weekend. This is what I'm doing the rest of the week. You can have that price improvement conversation then, of just letting them know it's like, hey, we're getting a whole bunch of people coming, but we're not getting any offers. Do you remember back to the beginning when we talked about what that means? The market's telling us that our price is not commensurate to what people are looking for.
Or there's
And
other things out there that compare better, you know? They have lots of choice right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Richie. Hello.
Okay.
Rebecca, one thing that I do is I like to um, renew edit and change the listing description to sort of refresh, maybe move the pictures around on MLS. And then our MLS has a reverse marketing option. So it'll show me how many agents have this particular type, size, etc. property in their search parameters, like saved searches. And it allows me to send out emails to those agents. And so by doing that every week or every couple of weeks, I can show the seller the numbers because I can go on my MLS and I can see how many views this week, how many saves this week. Kind of the way Zillow will show that as well, but I think it's better from the MLS because it'll show specifically the agents that have it saved, have the parameters saved. It's just another data point. And as Janie started out by saying, it makes us look good and it's not us and our opinion, it's actual data. So that's kind of a way of sort of tweaking the data that we can offer because, God knows we need something to say sometimes when we touch base with our sellers.
Yeah,
And it's really weird here. Like I have a multifamily. It's on 65 days on market now for a 2-family, and like 65 days on market in Boston, we are truly in a bubble. Like whenever there's national real estate market reports, we just laugh and go, yeah, that has nothing to do with us. 65 days would be tragic if it was a single family home anywhere in the area. For a condo, it's borderline getting stale and smelly. For multifamilies currently, so we just lost 5 weeks to a mortgage contingency that fell through, went back on market last Wednesday, and I had 2 kick-ass open houses this weekend because there's just not a lot of multifamilies with the rent rolls and the price point that this multi has. So it really is very helpful to know your data. It's one thing I've learned from Janie and other wise folks who've been at this a lot longer than me, because it's something that we really need to know. And I was able to just kind of pat the seller's hand and say, dude, 65 days is not bad. You have almost no competition and your rent rolls completely kick the butts of any of the 3 families that are in the same neighborhood.
yeah. That's like you were an advisor to them. That's the whole main thing. All right, guys. Well, I know we went a little bit long, but hopefully this was useful to you. And this is saved in our Facebook group as always for all of our training, so you can find it in there. And I will see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the collaborative call where I'm actually doing the training tomorrow too, and that's going to be all around where to find luxury listings in today's market. So, all right, guys, bye.